looking back on his life's work, Arnold Janssen said, "I well recognize the importance and significance of Rome, and for that very reason I strove, as soon as it was possible for me, to establish a branch in the center of Christendom." The center of Christendom meant two things to Arnold Janssen: Rome as the place of the first martyrs, the two great apostles Peter and Paul, and Rome as the unifying center of the Catholic Church, the seat of the Pope. When Arnold Janssen first traveled to Rome in 1878, a world had collapsed there. The papacy had ceased to be what it had been since the Middle Ages, namely the office of a secular ruler. The territory of the Papal States had stretched across all of central Italy. In 1870, however, Italian troops marched into Rome and the Papal States were incorporated into the Kingdom of Italy. Pope Pius IX was left with only the Vatican, the Lateran and the summer residence Castel Gandolfo. Arnold Janssen first arrived in Rome in June. Pius IX had died just 6 months earlier and Leo XIII had already succeeded him. Arnold Janssen, in a private audience, presented his newly founded missionary society to Pope Leo. In a letter to Steil, Father Arnold described the meeting with the Pope thus: "The Holy Father received me kindly. I knelt before him and he offered me his ring to kiss. I began by giving him a brief outline in Latin of the foundation, purpose and institution of our house, which he listened to with much interest. I then presented him with the journals of our house, bound and bearing the papal coat of arms. At the top was the Sacred Heart Messenger. I explained to him that it was through this magazine that it had been possible to found our house and to maintain it until now. Then he took the City of God and admired the beauty of its pictures. When the pages came where his picture was, I told him that it was already printed before his election, and at the same time the assumption was made that he would perhaps be elevated to the chair of Peter, whereupon he asked me in amazement, ad hoc erat ante electionem, and this was before the election. We interviewed Father Andrzej Miotk, SVD, an historian working in the Founders' Archives here in Rome, to find out more about Arnold Janssen's visits to Rome.
The stay of our founder in Rome has a very rich history because he visited this place, the Eternal City, for 10 times. So if we then add all the days, months he spent in Rome, it will be almost over 1 year. And during this time of his stay in Rome, he met very important dignitaries of the church. And first of all, he wanted always to have the audience with the Pope. So he met 4 times with the Pope Leo XIII and 2 times with Pius X. The time when he arrived first time in Rome, it was 1878, so it was just the time of change in the church, because the longest pontificate in the church history of Pius IX finished, he died, and the new one Pope was Gioacchino Pecce, the Leo XIII. He was in some way not the Pope who was expected by the cardinals even, but then the situation evolved in such way he was elected and he was Pope for 25 years in Rome. But it was also very important time of renewal in the Church. You have first of all, there are 2 dogmas proclaimed by the Pope. The dogma of Immaculate Conception of the Virgin Mary, and then the very influential in Europe was the dogma of infallibility of the Pope, which was proclaimed during the First Vatican Council, 1870. As for the events which were important for the founder, I think he had very much the spiritual view of Rome as the center of the Christianity, and he liked very much, first of all, to visit the places where the faith was witnessed by the saints, by the martyrs. He usually celebrated his masses in the places of saints and martyrs. But what is also essential, that his visits to Rome were guided by a concrete agenda or purposes, like the main issue which he wanted to discuss with the cardinals, with the were regarding the missions, the new missions. First of all, the first very important issue was to get the new mission for the society. Then the foundation of the houses of the society was also a special topic of his dealing with the officials. One of the most difficult issues and the purpose of his visit was the rule of the society, to give the sound foundation to the society. So he spent a lot of time in the congregation on Propaganda Fide, and then the congregation for the religious causes, where he started to, he wanted to achieve as quick as possible also the rule, the definitive rule for the society. The typical day of the founder in Rome. So we are also very blessed with the work of our previous historian, and I would like to mention my predecessor, Father Joseph Alt, who spent many years here in Rome, I think over 20 years. And one of the publications which is very interesting and very informative is this one, the Römische Niederlassung der Steiler Missionare, from the beginning to the year 2003. So the history of our foundation in Rome is a very interesting book, because it shows not only the further development, but also the life of the founder in Rome and his goal, objectives, his agendas. So this work is a very precious contribution to our history. Father Arnold in Rome, his daily schedule was much dependent on the availability of the people he wanted to meet. They were not always accessible. So you read in the documents that he spent a lot of time to walking only from one office to another, and sometimes on the same day he went to this apartment 3 times, because the cardinal, the official, was not at home, so he had to repeat the visits. But in some way he also used the time then for the visits. He very appreciated the places of worship important for Rome. He went, for example, to the catacombs with the rector of the Campo Teutonico, the rector de Val. He went to San Sebastian catacombs. He also brought from that place then 3 pieces of stone. So it is really, he also was a collector of important items related to the faith, to the life of the martyrs. And we have here in archives the boxes with some of the items he collected here staying in Rome. Besides, he then visited such places like the house of St. Bridget, the convent of Santa Francesca Romana. He went to the rooms of St. Ignatius and many other saints who were had here in Rome his tombs. He visited the places and prayed. Most of the time when he was in Rome, he spent also in the Basilica St. Peter. That was his favorite place, where he asked for the intercession of the saints in the very important matters of the society. Early morning after the Mass, he was on the way, and then he arrived to the house where he was staying in the evening at 7:30 p.m. Sometimes he just took some coffee in the osteria. He was very satisfied with the prices. For example, the coffee was very cheap here in Rome. And then he also bought a bun to eat something. That is also too important to note that at the beginning he didn't have one abode he could stay, yes, because the college was here inaugurated in 1888. So in the during the previous visits, he went to Campo Teutonico, to the College dell'Anima. Also he stayed with the Resurrectionists. Just to give some example from the sources, he wrote, "Yesterday and the day before I was with various cardinals of the propaganda, all of whom received me warmly, and most of whom gave me more than half an hour to tell them about our house and situation in our region." Father Bloom commented that he loved the tombs of the martyrs and saints, but not the negotiations with the Curia. He was not in his element in dealing with the officials. That was for the cause of the society. That was in some way sacrifice, but he did it because it was necessary. He wanted to fulfill the will of God. He visited many places in Rome. Also, he went outside Rome. For example, he met with the Cardinal of Cologne, who became then official also in Rome, was one of the cardinals of the Propaganda Fide, to Frascati, and in his palace he then had a conversation with the Cardinal Melchers in Frascati. Oh, he went also to Sanelia, the Castel Sanelia, where was his friend who became Bishop Bernard Döbling. He visited also Sutri, Nepi, the places which were related to the bishop. We can say he was on the move all the time when he was in Rome, yes. Father Arnold met also very important founders of the religious congregations. He liked to travel by the train of the third class, so it took time. And during the way to Rome, he also made this, he will stay for some hours in Turin, where he met once the founder of the Salesians, Father Don Bosco, and he also then stopped in Switzerland, where he then wanted to see, for example, the printing shops, to see some new solutions which were introduced in other congregations. Then he would stop in Florence to meet also his very important friend who was much present also in Steyr as an exorcism master, Father Jailer, the Franciscan, who was also expert of San Bonaventure, and that had also influence on founders' understanding of the Trinity. In Rome, he also liked to be in touch with the founders, like founder of the Resurrectionist, Father Semenenko, and he was very important. Our founder took his rule to study. Then on the way back to San Gabriel, he met, for example, the Combonians in Verona twice. Even he mentioned that during the second stay by the Combonians, he received the bed of the Daniel Comboni, where he could sleep. But there was a very strong relation, interest, also the mission interest, because Daniel Comboni was also just a year after the foundation in Steyr. He visited also the bishop in Brixen. Then on the way back to Europe, he met also Father Joseph Reinademets in Brixen in 1779. And then also, yes, he was meeting also Father Jordan, also important founder, also some of the foundresses of the congregations, yes. So that was really very occupied time when he was in Rome. It was very also demanding of him. Sometimes he then was in the presence of his later, especially with his secretary. Once or twice he was with Father Andrzej, which by the way was then one of the issues of his debates here in Rome because of some troubles regarding his mission in China. He had too many things in his agenda to face during this stay in Rome.